to us.
We had water go on that fire at the end of that dam. Now, this is
But you played no role. You seem to be basking in its warmth, and yet you didn't try and doubt.
Backfilling out of New York and New Jersey or wherever he found everybody coming down with financial conflicts of interest. But, you know, the Democrats have their problems, true. So let's focus on fixing this problem in Washington.
Are they on fire, too? Well, but hold on, wait. Are they setting fires also?
Financial conflicts of interest. They've got the whole Me Too thing, yet they can't figure out what's going on with Keith Ellison out in Minnesota. So the Democrats have problems as well as the Republicans.
Stop. I want you to, and I agree with that, of course. My question is, do their problems qualify as a dumpster fire or merely maybe a malfunctioning microwave? I mean, where on the kind of heat scale would you put their problems?
I'd say they're right in there with the Republican problems. Washington, D.C. is a dumpster fire, and we aren't going to put it out until we get the money out of politics, get the politicians to start behaving.
Basically, you take the Republican dumpster, the Democratic dumpster, put them together, and you've got a conflagration there, don't you?
Of course, and everybody just accuses the other party of being corrupt. And as I say, they don't bother to investigate.
Says the man who stood in front of a burning dumpster and did nothing to put it out. We got to go. Unfortunately, Richard, good luck. Get the hose, take control, put out that fire. Good to see you. That is it for us this week. Be sure to tune into the show. Monday, we will be here, an exclusive story about big tech working to change the 2016 election results. Monday night, don't miss it. See you then.
Rig an election, influence your vote, stop Donald Trump, the president you voted for. They tried before he was elected. They've tried to undermine him ever since. Now we've got Anonymous, a figure inside the administration, claiming the Trump presidency will soon be over, one way or another. Is that a veiled threat coming from the deep state? Plus, we have new developments surrounding FISA abuse in the investigation. Andrew McCabe, we now know there is a grand jury convened, and he may be just the first of many officials who are about to be in serious legal trouble. Buckle up. It's time for this Friday edition News Breaking Opening Monologue. He totally wrecked the economy, doubled our national debt, more debt than every other president before him combined. He failed to stop the rise of ISIS. Billions of dollars to the Iranian mullahs that actually were chanting death to America. He ignored Putin's massive power grab, Crimea, Ukraine, neglected the simmering crisis in North Korea, and he's back. Just in time for the midterm elections, and he wants to tell you how to vote. Earlier today, Barack Hussein Obama delivered this so-called warning to America. Let's take a look.
I'm here today because this is one of those pivotal moments when every one of us, as citizens of the United States, need to determine just who it is that we are, just what it is that we stand for. And as a fellow citizen, not as an ex-president, but as a fellow citizen, I'm here to deliver a simple message, and that is that you need to vote because our democracy depends on it.
Now, what a sanctimonious one. As Reagan said, stay the course. There you have former President Obama. Well, he is actually right about one thing, because in 60 days, remember, 2016, it was about the forgotten men and women of this country. If you don't go out and vote, the consequences will be dire. The Trump agenda, they will stop in its tracks. Obama's friends in Congress that brought us to the brink of economic catastrophe and weakness and apology on the world stage, guess what? They want power back. They want to stop Trump, and they even want to impeach him. Now, we're going to have an important mini monologue about the midterms you can't afford to miss. That's later in the show, including more of Obama's hypocritical, self-righteous remarks that should make your blood boil. All right, but first, our investigation into the deep state rolls on tonight, and what we have now uncovered is now beginning to connect all of the dots. I think we now understand what the insurance policy is, worse than we originally thought. The foundation of this republic is now shaken to its core, the biggest abuse of power scandal in history. You've got a few unelected, high-ranking officials inside of our government trying and almost succeeding to alter the course of this country's history. At the very center of it all is the man whose name should be seared into your brain, Bruce Ohr. He is the face now of deep state corruption. And according to a damning investigative report from the Hill's John Solomon, in the summer of 2016, it was Orr. Remember, he was the fourth highest ranking member of the DOJ, tampering with an office that Steele was passionate about Donald Trump never being president. Bruce Orr knew the dossier was biased, would never hold up in court. He knew it was tainted. He knew it was not verified. Should just be the tip of the iceberg. Everyone who committed this fraud on the FISA court using unverified information, the Steele dossier by a Trump hater, probably should be investigated and prosecuted. That would mean Comey and Yates. And yeah, the guy that did the last one, Rod Rosenstein, the guy that appointed Mueller, need to be held accountable. Multiple Republican lawmakers now demanding the president declassify and unredact parts of multiple FISA documents. On top of that, the 302s as it relates to Bruce Orr, Christopher Steele, and the Gang of Eight material. We're expecting the president could make this information available even as early as this weekend. Now, we're talking about everything that the Gang of Eight had. We know the specific pages of FISA that we had, apparently exculpatory information on Carter Page, and even somebody like Papadopoulos, who just was sentenced to 14 days in jail, $28 million later. This information must be released. You, the American people, have a right to know how a fraud was committed on a FISA court against the Trump campaign associate, not once but multiple times. They never by omission. And what we've shown you each and every night right here on this program is what is a scary level of corruption that's only risen to the surface because Hillary didn't win in spite of all these efforts. If she won, we wouldn't know any of this. The deep state would be alive and well, working behind the scenes, corruptly, undermining your vote, what you want for your country. Biggest abuse of power scandal ever. Now, thankfully, the president he's breaking up some China in Washington. He's smashing the status quo. He's shattering all the establishment politics. The old rules are gone. That's why one such cowardly bureaucrat who claims to be a senior official, no previous president was more tough on leakers than Obama. I know, shocking. He subjected his own staff to lie detector tests, prosecuted multiple individuals, targeted members of the press who published leaked stories, including former Fox News reporter James Rosen, who was surveilled, even accused of being a co-conspirator because he dared to report with anonymous sources inside the Obama White House. That was Obama that did all that. Meanwhile, the super patriot who authored this op-ed in the New York Times, if you were truly working behind the scenes for the benefit of the country, why not stay behind the scenes? Why risk exposure in a very public way? Because this individual, unelected, is unaccountable. They think their truth is better than what the president ran on, what the American people voted for. And he's pushing their political agenda, he or her, whoever it happens to be, that they know better than we, the smelling Walmart people. And those opinions are more valued than your opinions. But ultimately, this is an attack on the presidency and the country. The country can get hurt in this process. The very reason why President Trump and the Secret Service now must do everything in their power to dismantle the deep state and find out whoever this is. We've got a lot to get to tonight. Joining us now, Fox News contributor, investigative reporter Sarah Carter, former assistant U.S. attorney Victoria Tunsing, and yes, Victoria has done legal work for me, and she said I was the worst client she ever had. And the Hill's John Solomon, who, let's start with your story here. Sure. Mueller's probe, let's get into what you have discovered as it relates to Orr, because now we have maybe an answer to the insurance policy question, because it includes Page, Strzok, Orr, Steele, and McCabe.
If you were going to create a company called Destroy Trump, Inc., the board of directors would be that group right there, right?
Scary.
They all had a motive. They all did things to advance the investigation. Sometimes we believe in violation of the FBI's rules, certainly in conflict of interest rules. And we now know that they were really in action in July, that what happened in July wasn't an organic walk-in of intelligence that raised concern. It was Bruce Orr taking information from his wife's company, Fusion GPS, and Christopher Steele, walking it over to the FBI and literally redirecting the FBI to a different piece of evidence than what they started with. Remember what they started with? George Papadopoulos? Big case, right?
Yeah,
2 weeks in vacation.
Days.
Yeah,
$28 million, 14 days, and the president tweeted that out.
And we now know, from my reporting, that early on the FBI found out that the Papadopoulos thing wasn't as serious as they thought. So Bruce Orr steps in. He gives them something else to go follow.
By the way, didn't the professor in London say
No big deal.
Everything,
nothing there.
Nothing there.
Nothing burger. That's what he called it.
Nothing burger.
Yep.
What else did you get in your report?
I think at the end of the day, what we now know is that throughout this process, Orr is acting like a steerer. He's steering this investigation. He's putting the FBI onto something else. And we now know that what he was using, the Steele dossier, he himself thought was uncorroborated, unverified, not worthy of being submitted to the court. And yet Andy McCabe and all those people you said in your monologue had signed it, they represented that as having been corroborated intelligence, good enough for a FISA warrant. There has to be an investigation of how this went wrong.
And Sarah, we go back in your reporting as well on all the things, the communications, 70 communications at least, meetings, texts, handwritten notes. What did we find? Christopher Steele was afraid he'd be exposed. He wanted firewalls to hold. He was passing information that he wanted through Orr to go directly to the special counsel's office. So that would be Hillary Clinton's bought and paid for lies ending up right in the office of Robert Mueller vis-a-vis his pit bull, Andrew Weissmann.
Think about how vast this is, Sean. I mean, if you look at John's story and we focus on Bruce Orr, yeah, that's one part of a much bigger puzzle. We've seen now that there is a resistance within the administration, within the bureaucracy, against the President of the United States, meaning against the people of this country. We're now seeing the pieces of this puzzle just kind of fit and fall together. They were on a fishing expedition to take this president down, to take candidate Trump down, and then to go after President Trump. And they haven't stopped. This is so dangerous because I want us to take a step back. This isn't just about what happened right now. Remember, the State Department was involved in this. Victoria Nuland was involved in this. John Kerry knew what was going on. There were other dossiers out there. And now I'm hearing there's even more dossiers that we still haven't even discovered that were put together by Fusion GPS and spread out across Washington, D.C. So this was an active disinformation effort to take down a candidate that people elected, and it's still ongoing.
Let me ask Victoria. And you've been around Washington politics a long time, and you've seen a lot over the years. But when you see anonymous people, unelected and unaccountable, thinking they know better than the President of the United States, we don't know what their classification is, what they may have access to or not have access to. It seems extraordinarily dangerous, quote, resistance within our own government around the President of the United States. And sooner or later, one way or another, it's over. And then Andrew McCabe, of course, and we now know a grand jury has been impaneled.
Well, I'll tell you what bothers me, Sean. I'm not at all surprised that Bruce Orr was involved in this plot months before, because what do you think? He wasn't talking to his wife and what she was doing early on in 2016. What bothers me as a former Justice Department official, because I know how it works, is that he was working in a counterintelligence investigation. He is in charge of criminal investigations, and that's like separation of church and state. I never got involved in counterintelligence investigations when I was a head of the criminal investigation unit. They're very different people. They're very different FBI agents that you work with, and they're very different rules for collecting evidence. So I am appalled that this wasn't a big red sign. And if he were really an honest dude, which he isn't, we all know, he would have gone to Sally Yates and said, hey, something really bad's going on here. No, he was participating in it. And here's what really bothers me about the FISA, what they did to FISA. They purposely lied to the FISA court about Carter Page. And I mean, he is really a big victim in all of this. The FBI, word in Washington is in the affidavit that they said, the FBI said in 2013, that Carter Page was in cahoots with the Russians as opposed to being an FBI asset and helping them bring an indictment against a Russian spy. More than that, they went after him for giving a speech in Moscow at the New Economic School. Guess who else made a speech there, Sean? Barack Obama.
Exactly.
In 2009.
All right, let me ask you one quick last question. And should the president declassify, unredact, and what does it mean that we now know a grand jury is impaneled? Does that mean everyone involved in FISA is in trouble?
Well, we don't know the scope of the grand jury investigation. We know it definitely involves McCabe lying to the media. If that reason about lying about his leaks to the media was they used the media to set up the FISA warrant to create corroborating evidence that really wasn't corroborating. Then this moves that in that direction.
Declassification should
opens
occur.
all this up. We're going to find out all the things that were omitted, all the omissions, and in this case, it's going to be a sin of omission that misled this court.
Sarah, both on declassification. Go ahead.
Absolutely. The American people deserve to know the truth. We deserve to know the truth. Those agencies need to be cleaned out, gutted out, and we need to move forward with our country. Absolutely, Sean.
And Victoria, do we need a Spartacus moment?
Yes, I am Spartacus. If the president doesn't do it, he's on defense, and he's got to be on offense because that's his nature.
And if he is, that would mean declassify, unredact, and let the American people see. And Sarah, I know you've been saying, and John, you've been saying this will be on a scale of 1 to 10 or what?
A 9, 10, maybe.
9 or 10.
Yep.
Sarah?
I believe a 10 and beyond.
Do you know? Everyone's seen it but me. I don't know anything. I thought my sources were better. All right, good to see you both. When we come back, the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, also later, Newt Gingrich. And I've got a special message for Barack Hussein Obama tonight. It's coming up. Right, yesterday, President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, told the Associated Press the president will not answer questions from Robert Mueller about obstruction of justice. The mayor is now with us, the president's attorney. Mr. Mayor, good to see you, sir. How are you?
How are you?
Okay, so obstruction is off the table. They're not even asking for it, or?
No, they're asking for it, and the only way we would ever consider it is if we got the questions on collusion first, which we've agreed to do. We'll review them. If they're fair, if they're comprehensive, if there's no holding back of questions so they can ask questions in a later round, if it's done in good faith, then when we finish that, we'll sit with them and talk about any further questions, whether we're talking about any further questions on collusion or obstruction. Problem with obstruction is this. It all takes place post-presidency. To agree to it would really be to waive major presidential privilege. Also, it would involve very, very deep conversations that are very much within the executive branch of government. And finally, they don't need it. One of the things they would have to show is they have particularized need. In other words, they couldn't get it any other way. So far, every question that we think they're going to ask, they have the answer to it.
And 1.4 million documents. Don McGahn, this surprised me to find out Don McGahn, the White House counsel, gave 30 hours of testimony.
After 34 hours of testimony.
Wow.
You don't need anything else. They have 1.4 million documents, 32 witnesses. Here's the big question on obstruction. Why did you fire Comey? Well,
he doesn't have to answer that.
He shouldn't have to answer that. He has the right to fire
Article
Comey.
2.
Plus, they have the answer. Take the Lester Holt tape and play it. There's your answer. Now, if you want him under oath to repeat that, you only want him under oath because you have some nefarious purpose.
In your previous life, people kind of forget. Next week is 9/11, 17 years later. But in your previous life, before being the mayor of New York, you were a prosecutor. So you make this statement, and I'll even say maybe inarticulate, but especially for those outside the legal community in legal jargon. And what you were saying, and Alan Dershowitz defended you strongly on this, is that if Don McGahn gives testimony, you said 34 hours, I thought it was 30, and they interview the president, and he says one thing that contradicts Don McGahn, they get to decide who's telling the truth.
Yeah, do I want 17 angry Democrats to decide?
Andrew Weissman and Jeannie Ray? No.
Give me a break. I mean, maybe they've shown a little too much bias to think that they would be objective and fair. And the reality is, if it's one-on-one, a he said, she said, there can be no determination of truth, which is why I said what I said. I mean, the fact is, even in a criminal trial, you don't prove truth. You prove have you proved guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Not all doubt.
Reasonable.
Yeah, reasonable doubt. So somebody innocent could be convicted if it's beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not all doubt. Somebody that's guilty may not be convicted because there isn't proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So you got to be naive to think that it's a search for pure objective truth. What I said was the only place you can find truth is if you go to Chuck Todd's little magic room and Meet the Press can figure out the truth, because he's the one complaining about this.
You know, there's a phrase in the Washington Post this week talking about this anonymous, the sleeper cells have awakened in the United States, meaning the resistance within the administration. There was one line that really caught my attention. I was talking about it earlier, is that, so we will do what we can to steer the administration in the right direction until one way or another it's over. Why do I think that should be a Secret Service investigation and nobody seems to pick up on it? This is an unelected, unaccountable, anonymous bureaucrat.
Maybe with top secret clearance.
Maybe here's the president talking about war, peace, sources, methods, intelligence.
Maybe he decides that a very damaging piece of information about national security should be leaked because it would hurt Donald Trump without regard to whether it would hurt the nation. Because whoever elected him to be the repository of determining what should be secret and what shouldn't be secret. This is a perfect perversion of what it means to be in federal office. This man, or woman, well, we think man, right, unless he's lying about that too.
Right.
This man should quit and hold a press conference. That would be the honorable thing to do. This is why I don't think it's any of the generals. I don't think anybody ever went to West Point. Pompeo put it best. Pompeo said, I was taught, if you disagree with the boss, you decide how important it is. If it's not that important, you stay. If it's conscience, you leave. And you stand up like a hero. Mm-hmm. This is no hero. No. This is a little slime ball.
It's also dangerous.
Dangerous? It's exceedingly dangerous because this man has decided he's the repository of truth. Again, what I'm telling you. I mean, all these left-wingers think they know truth.
More than,
well, you know who knows truth? God. God knows truth. We do the best we can to struggle with it. And hopefully we get close to it.
But the president ran. The president was elected. The president will be held accountable. The president, the American people gave him a seal of approval, not this anonymous person. All right, Mayor, good to see you. Now the big question, House lawmakers calling on the president to declassify documents that are related to FISA abuse. 302's Ed Henry has a full report tonight, and we'll get congressional reaction. Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz later. Well, I have a message in a mini monologue to Barack Hussein Obama. That's coming up. All right, so Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill, they are calling on President Trump to declassify the highly redacted FISA warrant on Trump campaign aide Carter Page and other documents. Joining us now with more is Fox News chief correspondent, White House correspondent Ed Henry. They want more than, they want the exact pages 10 through 12 in the final FISA warrant, the third renewal warrant application.
Yep.
That's the Rosenstein one. Pages 10 to 12, 17 to 34. They want all the Bruce Ohr 302s. They want all the Gang of Eight documents. They want LePage and Strzok memos all released. So they're asking for a lot. The president can do it with the stroke of a pen.
That's right. And the 302s are the FBI interviews, basically. These are sensitive documents that normally don't leak out. But what we're hearing from people close to the White House is that the president appears to be inching closer to releasing some of this information, number one. And number two, that people around the president believe that some pieces are now falling into place in the allegations that the president and others have been raising about the investigation of the investigators. First of all, what we've learned in the last 24 hours or so is that there has been a grand jury in Washington impaneled to investigate Andrew McCabe, the former number 2 at the FBI. That's important because, remember, what he's being investigated for is allegedly lying about his contacts with the media. That's what got him fired from the FBI job in the first place.
We know if there's more, though.
Yeah, and that's the question, is because in the course of the investigation and the testimony that Bruce Ohr has given to Congress in the last couple of weeks, there have been questions raised about the fact that Bruce Ohr at one point met with both his wife, Nellie, who was over at Fusion GPS, digging up dirt on Donald Trump, and you see Bruce Ohr there, as well as Christopher Steele, right? And then they go to, and then they talk to Page and Strzok, and there's some sort of a meeting, we believe, between Ohr and McCabe. And so the question is, was there a lot more here that has not been previously disclosed, number one? And number two, you're hearing from Democrats in Washington that this information is too sensitive to be released. But interesting, they're making that argument, Sean, right after you had Cory Booker at the Supreme Court hearing saying, hey, let's release everything. We need to know everything we can. So the idea that Democrats have spent the last week saying we need more transparency, that might actually bolster the case for Republicans in Congress to release this info.
Might be as early as next week, according to people I'm talking to. Ed Henry, thank you. Good report. Joining us now with reaction, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. You know, when you look at the people that Ed mentioned in his report, Page and Strzok and Bruce Ohr and McCabe, we got all the central figures in the insurance policy aspect of this. One has to wonder, is this now what, and Christopher Steele, one has to now wonder, is that where this is leading Jim Jordan?
Yeah, the first guy that Bruce Ohr talks to after he meets with Christopher Steele is Andy McCabe. He calls him up a day or two later and then meets with him and Lisa Page. So all the key people at the FBI knew what was going on before they take the dossier to the court. They knew the Ohr's involvement, they knew who paid for the dossier, and they knew that the guy who wrote it, Christopher Steele, had told Bruce Ohr that he was desperate to stop Trump. And we don't believe they conveyed any of that critical information to the FISA court when they went to get the warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. That's why this is so important. We get it. And they knew this all up front, right when it started in late July, early August. That's why this is so critical that this information become public.
And that's the point. If you got Page, Strzok, Ohr, Steele, and McCabe, you got the whole insurance policy. Matt Gaetz.
And
it's almost like you got the board of directors of the deep state together, Sean. And I mean,
but they all hate Trump. The one thing in common, they all hate Donald Trump.
Andrew Weissmann knew too, as well, Sean. He knew on the front end of this.
You're right. Because let me just add one thing. Because Ohr is hearing from Christopher Steele over 70 contacts. And not only are they talking about firewalls not wanting to be exposed, but also, oh, did you get my stuff to the special counsel? Which we now know a contact was Andrew Weissmann.
And, Sean, to put a finer point on what Jim had said, it's not the statements or words in these documents that we're looking for. It's the omissions. It's the information that is not presented to the courts. I mean, we caught the Ohrs red-handed. You got Bruce Ohr shuttling information to the FBI that was developed by his wife, and the money paying for it all came from the DNC. I mean, the Ohrs are probably the most dangerous power couple in Washington since the Clintons were running around this place. And I think that until we get the information about what was presented to the FISA court, we won't know the full depths of the misconduct at the FBI and Department of Justice to inappropriately lie to a court. And I think that the penalties are just starting to rack up.
Well, then let's go to the issue that we now know a grand jury's impaneled, Jim Jordan, and then the issue of unredacting by the president and declassifying by the president. Do we have any idea? We know witnesses are called. Does that mean that everybody that was involved in that phony, fraudulent, Clinton bought and paid for dossier, the fraud on the court and information withheld purposely, more fraud on the court, is everybody that signed that now in legal jeopardy, perhaps?
We'll see. What we do know is the FBI and the DOJ had a sophisticated leaking project going on. Andrew McCabe lied about that, according to the Inspector General, 3 times under oath and faces a criminal referral. And as Ed pointed out, there's now a grand jury been impaneled on the Andrew McCabe issue. So this is what they did, I believe. They leaked information to the press, and then they used the reports the press wrote to buttress the false dossier to give it legitimacy when it was a false document. That was the game that was being played. And we know that from Devin Nunes' memo that the Intelligence Committee put out, where they cite news reports to add weight to the dossier. It was all baloney, this circular game they played. That's, I think, maybe the biggest concern that we see.
All right, last word.
And we may see members, we may see members of the media caught up in that as well, Sean. You'll remember there was a reference in the Inspector General's report to members of the media inappropriately giving gifts to people at the FBI to get stories and get tips. That may have facilitated the illegal leaks, and I think people could go to jail for it.
All right, great work. We'll see if that happens maybe as early as this weekend or early next week. Good to see you both. When we come back, I have a message for Barack Obama, a Hannity Friday mini monologue. And by the way, his comments about Trump will be pretty important. We'll remind him of himself straight ahead. All right, so today, President Obama, he thrusted himself back into the political spotlight. He was sanctimonious, smug, lecturing you, the American people. He wants to tell you how to vote because we smelly Walmart people that cling to our God guns, Bibles, and religion, well, we can't be trusted to make important decisions. Only 60 days from today left until you head to the polls, and I keep reminding you what's at stake here come November. By the way, that's the subject of tonight's mini monologue. All right, so President Obama said that Americans need to vote in November because our democracy depends on it. Okay, what I'm about to say may shock some people. He's right. This November election is more important than any midterm in our lifetime. The stakes, they couldn't be higher. Democrats have proven again and again they will do anything, say everything and anything to get their power back, to make sure even that Donald Trump fails, no matter how much it hurts the country. We cannot let this happen. Now, today, President Obama tried to actually take credit for the economic successes we're now seeing. It's not true, but we'll show it to you.
When you hear how great the economy is doing right now, let's just remember when this recovery started. I mean, I'm glad it's continued, but when you hear about this economic miracle that's been going on, when the job numbers come out, monthly job numbers, and suddenly Republicans are saying it's a miracle, I have to kind of remind them, actually, those job numbers are the same as they were in 2015, in 2016.
Actually, fake news. You didn't build that. Now, let's remind Obama about the economy left. Remember, under his watch, 95 million Americans out of the labor force. Thanks to President Obama's stellar leadership, we had the lowest labor participation rate since the 70s. We now have the highest. We had the lowest home ownership rate in 51 years. Obama. 8 years of Obama, 13 million more Americans on food stamps, 8 million more Americans in poverty. We now have 4 million fewer Americans on food stamps, 4 million new jobs. Under him, anemic growth, endless, burdensome regulation, the lowest consumer confidence. That was the Obama economy, and he took on more debt than every other president before him combined. He can spin it any way he wants. But we, the American people, are smart enough not to believe the fake news that he was trying to feed us today. Now, President Trump actually responded to Obama's outrageous claim as he tried to claim victory when he was a failure. Watch.
I think he was trying to take some credit. He was trying to take credit for this incredible thing that's happening to our country. If the Democrats got in, I have to say this to President Obama, and it wasn't him, but would have been the same thing. If the Democrats got in with their agenda in November of almost 2 years ago, instead of having 4.2 up, I believe, honestly, you'd have 4.2 down. You'd be negative. You'd be in negative numbers right now. You'd be in negative number.
The Atlanta Fed right now is predicting 4.7% GDP growth for the third quarter. Obama also took shots at the president's foreign policy while ignoring his own blunders during his tenure in the White House. Let's see, Iran, and I'll have more flexibility. Tell Putin. Take a look.
They're undermining our alliances, cozying up to Russia. What happened to the Republican Party?
Now, Trump has been tougher on Russia than Obama ever was. Remember, it was Obama, basically, the one guy that ignored Russia's power grab. Remember Ukraine? Remember Crimea? It was Obama who allowed Russia to prop up Assad, the Syrian dictator, gassing his own people. Obama gave Clinton the reset button, how dumb that was. Remember, he was promising, I'll have more flexibility after the election. Tell Vladimir.
I wanted to present you with a little gift which represents what President Obama and Vice President Biden and I have been saying. And that is, we want to reset our relationship. And let's do it together. So we will do it together, okay?
This is my last election, please. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah. Okay. I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir.
$150 billion to Iranian mullahs. And by the way, he expressed his admiration for his friends and allies in the mainstream media, which shouldn't surprise us. They helped push through Obama's radical agenda. They never held him accountable. It was a love fest from day one. He was the anointed one. They gave him a pass for hanging out with, let's see, Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dorn. That's where he started his political career. Make excuses. 20-plus years in the pews of Mr. GD America, and America's chickens have come home to roost. And it shouldn't shock anybody that Obama's going to defend his media friends. But once again, today, Obama, he still can't stop taking shots at Fox. Can't help himself. Take a look.
It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say that we don't threaten the freedom of the press because they say things or publish stories we don't like. I complained plenty about Fox News. But you never heard me threaten to shut them down or call them enemies of the people.
Actually, more fake news, a Hannity history lesson. Obama took multiple shots at Fox News, this show in particular during his presidency. And since Obama seems to have a blind spot in his memory, we've got the tape to remind him. Take a look.
I'll put Mr. Burgess up against Sean Hannity. He'll tear him up.
I mean, look, is Sean Hannity suddenly going to get on the airwaves and say, I was wrong about this Obama guy. He's my man. No, that's not going to happen.
I think that there's a certain segment of hardcore Sean Hannity fans that probably wouldn't want to go have a beer with me. There's no doubt about that.
If you watch Fox News on a regular basis, it is a constant menu. They will find, like, folks who make me mad. I don't know where they find them.
I wasn't viewed through this prism of Fox News and conservative media and making me scary.
He whined the whole time. And by the way, he wanted Mr. Burgess to tear me up. Wow. Obama did target Fox News while he was in office. Here's an example. 2009, the Obama White House, they tried to exclude Fox News from a press pool interview with an administration official. 2013, the story broke that the Obama DOJ, under the leadership of, Mr. Holder, they actually spied on one of our reporters at the time, James Rosen. They looked through Rosen's phone calls and his emails from 2009 while attempting to find a source for one of Rosen's stories. So what you heard from Obama today was nothing more than fake news and liberal spin. This is why this midterm election is so important. He's right about one thing. It's important. I can't stress enough. A lot in the country's at stake. Democrats win in November. You stay home. Well, this is what's going to happen. They'll rescind the tax cuts. They want their crumbs back. That's right. Nancy Pelosi calls them crumbs, and she wants them back. And that's the money in your paycheck that will be gone. They want to impeach President Trump. It's not a secret. Chucky Schumer openly admitted it just this past week. Here's him in his own words.
Sooner the better. Sooner the better. That's not answering the question. You got to get a few Republicans. We're trying. We're both. Democrats are on your side.
They want to impeach him, but they're trying not to say it. And then, of course, they want to keep Obamacare. How did that work out? Keep your doctor, keep your plan, pay less. Not very well. This week, we saw just how low they'll stoop to block a Supreme Court pick of President Trump. Democrats want, what, to abolish ICE? They want open borders. They will kill off every single deep state investigation that's going on right now, and they'll be investigating Donald Trump from now till the cows come home.